He thought things should be kept as they were, but the problem in Spanish society, things were changing, and they were changing fast. As Spanish culture changed, leftist movements arose that challenged the traditional structures of power in Spain. The Catholic Church, the monarchy, the military dictatorship, which was run by Miguel Primo de Rivera, and some of the owners of large estates, the rich, the powerful, etc. So Miguel Primo de Rivera, the military dictator, things kind of got bad with him. His policies were really just becoming a big problem. People in Spain had kind of had enough, and he was forced to resign in 1930. But that's not important because the good news is we finally are having democratic elections in Spain again. Yay! Woo-hoo! That is some good news. And they're going to be held by King Alphonse, who is going to oversee them. He's a representative of the king. This is going to go great. Oh, the left won. Time to abdicate. Bye, king. There you have it. The founding of the Spanish monarchy and the republic, and formation of the Constitution in April 1931 saw an exciting fresh start for the country and a rise in possibility of modernization and development on the people's terms. What an excitement. But except for Franco, this was described as a personal catastrophe because Franco didn't believe in democracy or even a multi-party system. Very sad. But he couldn't really do too much about it except for try and play within the rules. So the right and the kind of entrenched power, having just taken a big L with the fact that their monarchy and military dictatorship had vanished like smoke, were kind of forced to play within the system, at least for the time being, and try and get something going in these election thingies we got going on now. So they did, and they won in the elections in 1933, establishing a new, strong coalition of conservatives. And guess who they appointed to be chief of the army? Franco. Yeah, not the great direction we all thought we were going in, right? But come on, you know what happens? He eventually gets to the dictatorship, right? Well, here is another kind of fun thing they had to do. He had to go back to the region of Asturias, the northern region in in Spain. I don't know why I keep saying France, and break up a miners' strike. Yes, once again, he did that by no big deal, just deporting a few people, killing a few others, using incredible amount of state violence to enforce the new kind of neoliberal policies that the conservative coalition was doing, and of course, really all in effect trying to reestablish the conservative orthodoxy and the kind of traditionalist, really most importantly, traditionalist Spanish conservative structure of monarchy at the top, church at the top, and rich people at the top, and everyone else at the bottom has to shut up. So 3 years later, in the wake of this kind of miners' strike that, if it really did one thing, pissed the left off, and they formed a new popular front, a coalition called the People's Front, and swept into power in 1936. And this didn't make things so hot for our boy, Francisco Franco. He was kind of given the pink slip, no surprise, and sent on a nice honeymoon holiday.
2,000 kilometers from Madrid.
2,000 kilometers away. That's what we like to hear. 2,000 kilometers away for Franco, banished kind of to the Canary Islands. But the government did keep a close eye on him by wiretapping his phone once in a while. That clip there you heard was from Biographics. We did a great review of the life of Franco, and we'll play a little bit more for you in the future with that, maybe, depending on how things go. But tensions between the left and the right of Spain were reaching a fever pitch. Churches were burning, priests were being murdered, leftist protesters were being murdered. There was everything, violence, chaos, bloodshed, property destruction. You name it, it was happening, and most likely to a pretty high degree on both sides. This is actually one of the rare cases where, if you look at the situation, both sides did play a pretty big role in this instigation. Just such a war with such an organized kind of socialist groups that you really never see. Most of the time, the right wing just kind of strikes back, and that's that. But the socialists really, in this situation, were organized, and they were lethal, and they were deadly, and they were pissed off. And that was something that you don't really see a lot of other times in history. And it really freaked a lot of people out, particularly two generals, Mola and Senuro. And they began to think about a military coup. And guess who they asked, but coldly turned down the request because he thought the risks were too high. Yes, Franco. That's right. You guessed it. Good. They kept going to Franco saying, please, Franco, you're so strong, you're so smart, you're so crazy. You need to be the one who leads the Tercio, that group that he formed, if you remember, that was all about, like, killing your men, women, and children and leaving your cities in ash. That's what he wanted to, that's what those generals wanted in the insurrection. And Franco was kind of back and forth on it until the most excellent, as he's officially called, Jose Calvo Sotelo, was murdered by a bodyguard of a Socialist Party leader, Indelcelio Prieto. And that was really what got the coup going. He was smuggled, Franco was, on a plane from London out to the Canaries and into Morocco. The plane went from London, picked up Franco in the Canaries, and then went to Morocco. Then the insurrection began. On July 19th, 1936, Franco arrived in civilian clothes at the Moroccan colony, the start of it all those years ago. The good news right off the bat for Franco was he had an army of 30,000 at his beck and call in Morocco, because the leaders there had gotten the army ready for him. But the problem was, how could he get that really tough and fierce group of troops, 30,000 strong, across the Straits of Gibraltar, patrolled by the Spanish Navy? Just that really tight tip from Tangier to Algeciras, I believe the city's called. Yeah, so Tangier to Algeciras. That's the journey. That's the voyage that they had to make in order to get the troops on board and start that coup, start that insurrection that they wanted so bad. Who did they call for help? Well, there was, I don't know if you've heard, two other powerful fascists on the rise at the time that another fascist like Franco thought he may be able to call for help: Hitler and Mussolini. They organized 800 flights ferrying his forces to mainland Spain. This was no quick coup. It was, in fact, a 3-year-long, incredibly bloody conflict called the Spanish Civil War. There was some kind of confusion in the ranks throughout the Civil War, with the Senuro, one of the original coup-plotting generals, passing away in a plane crash. But at this time, he was on the charge, Franco was. He was getting up to Seville and nearing the Spanish border. Of course, who would he have to replace Senuro but the General Caballeros of the military junta? Which is never a good sign when I hear that word. I think you should always take a pause for a second. But yeah, he was making some success, working his way up to about level at this point with the Portuguese border and gaining some success. At this point, he had reached the city of Seville. All the army had gone. All that was left was civilians. From here, I will let Biographics explain what happened next.
Quickly led his army northwards, facing only the resistance of civilians. His African army soon reached Badajoz near the Portuguese border. After reaching the city, Franco embarked in a political cleansing of the area. As witnessed by Portuguese journalist Mario Neves, hundreds of prisoners were rounded up in the local bullfighting ring and executed by firing squad. Franco continued his march towards Madrid, but in September he ordered a diversion to Toledo, south of the capital. In Toledo, a small garrison of nationalists was besieged by the Republican army inside the Alcazar, the castle which housed the very military academy in which young Francisco had graduated.
And that key base was really something that Franco realized was more of and because of course now there were news cameras, there was a sense of the fact that events could happen and travel all across the world in a very quick way, obviously not as quick as now, but the fact that he could come up and into Toledo, obviously not just the place where he graduated, but also a big religious and traditional capital in Spain, and restore that was a big sign for many Spaniards that this was the guy who's going to restore Spain to its traditional values. And for some people, especially people with a lot of money and a lot of power, that looked very appealing. As the Spanish nationalist army led by Franco in some parts continued to gain steam, they started to realize that they were disunified. They needed a strong leader to carry them through in the army and take control of the state. And there was a little bit of back and forth on this. Franco was somewhat reluctant, but his brother pushed him in and really was the kind of schemer behind this that set him up for a very, very scary thing, outsmarting the other generals to not just ensure unified command over the army, which everybody kind of agreed with, owing to his military skill and prowess, but something that was kind of a little bit more under the radar. He was now the Generalissimo, the Caudillo, the all-lifelong, all-powerful ruler of Spain for a duration of time that was supposed to be before the war, but was cleverly redacted by Francisco's brother, Nicolas Franco, in the bulletin that announced the news, of course, making the time limit less for the war and more for life, or at least as long as he could keep it. By the October months of the fall months of 1936, around October, Spanish nationalists had taken control of about a third of the country, mostly the north and western third of it, and were doing pretty well, looking to take the next steps of the war. Franco continued to grow and assert his ruthlessness. He and his generals had a habit of purging cities of civilians after they conquered them, inducing mass murder, and really it was a total war on both sides. But if you do look at the numbers, there was more civilians and towns and damage wrought that shouldn't have been wrought in a war done by Franco. They declared an enemies list as really quite long. Franco Spain had many official enemies: loyalists of the Second Spanish Republic, liberals, socialists of different stripes, Protestants, atheists, intellectuals, homosexuals, Freemasons, and Basque, Catalan, and Galician nationalists. So a lot of people to purge, and boy, did they not waste any time doing it. But there was some good news for the rebels, or they're not the rebels, but the Republicans as well. They had the support of Stalin and many other figures and troops that would kind of just come and volunteer in the fight, forming a foreign brigade that actually was successful in stopping Franco and his troops at a key battle in the battle called the Battle of the Jarama River. Sure, again, I'm butchering all these names viciously here. I do deeply apologize for that, but what will be, will be. It really is remarkable, though, to see the foreign support of these Republicans, including 5,000 Italians and something like 3,000 Germans. They made up a 60,000-strong member foreign brigade that was coming there to help fight the insurgents, Franco and his ilk. Really kind of shows you the support and the kind of solidarity at play, especially with some help from Russia, Big Brother Russia, which always seems to kind of get in there. And I'm sure there was some influence, as we already know, there was influence and aid given to Franco by the fascist powers in Italy and Germany. Meanwhile, in the north, in Santander, Italian fascists and blackshirts and the Francoist nationalist army picked up the key city of Santander, helping them consolidate in the north. Meanwhile, fascists air-bombed, and really German fascists carpet-bombed the civilian targets in Barcelona, Durango, and Guernica. Of course, I'm sure you know why. I put a special emphasis on that one, of course, leading to the famous Picasso. Again, absolutely brutal time for the Spanish civilians, kind of caught in the middle of this really horrifying fascist aggression that has taken place here. A full-on coup against a military, against a democratically elected government led by these forces, leading to blood and destruction that really nobody wants here. So obviously a very, very scary time, and just imagining the repression and the fear at play, bombs flying overhead, carpet bombs in a civil war. It really is hard to overstate the destruction that was wrought at such a short period of time. There was somewhat of a turning point in the battle along the Ebro River that was